So today I'm going to be reviewing Looking for Alaska by John Green. Looking for Alaska is written from the point of view of a high school student named Miles Pudge Halter, who begins attending Culver Creek boarding school. He is a quiet and somewhat shy teenager. There at the boarding school, he becomes close with his roommate, who he calls the Colonel, and a few other students. Most of the students there have a defining characteristic about them. For example, the Colonel memorizes countries' capitals, and Pudge memorizes people's last words. Pudge develops a romantic attraction to a girl named Alaska, who enchants him with her wit and unpredictability. Their group of friends becomes very tight-knit and gradually becomes really close, but in their escapades and their pranks that they pull, they never really do anything criminal. Alaska is really the one who draws them all together, but one night after they'd snuck alcohol into her room and were having a good time, she abruptly leaves. The next day, Alaska is found dead, having crashed head-on into a stopped car on the highway. Her friends are shocked, and Pudge really begins to learn about the kind of emotional trauma that his friend Alaska had been going through that none of them really knew about. Pudge and the Colonel have to grapple with the idea that it was them who were responsible for Alaska's death, since they were the ones who knew that she was leaving. It helps the two of them realize that life goes on, and they can carry on her positive attitude and her wonder at the world, which helped her become that person who they all revolved around. At the school, there are a lot of rules that the students are supposed to follow, but Alaska's group is usually able to talk themselves out of sticky situations. However, if this story had taken place in an earlier time period, a lot of the things that happen in the story wouldn't be possible. For one thing, the co-ed relations that are allowed at this school probably wouldn't have been permitted in an earlier time period. So a lot of the hanging out that these friends do wouldn't be permissible, and they probably wouldn't be such good friends. Another thing is that in an earlier time period, these students wouldn't have an opportunity to gain access to cigarettes and alcohol, which are these kids' main vices. A lot of the plot events that are pivotal to the story are fueled by or involving these things, which really are part of the teenage culture of that time. Something I think that people of my age would connect with, and myself, is the struggle that the characters go through to make decisions and choose to do what they think would be the best choice for them. Only you can tell yourself what to do at a given situation, and in the story, Pudge has to decide whether he wants to get to know Alaska better or not, and he really does decide to, which makes him completely different by the end of the story from the character that he was in the beginning. In our own lives, we have to make decisions based on what we think is right. We have to make judgment calls, just like how Pudge blames himself for letting Alaska go. Everyone has to make judgment calls, and the choices we make, we have to live with. Throughout Looking for Alaska, the characters grow and change, and I think that happens in much the same way any real person would. It's a really realistic story, and it manages to work in enough fun that the sad moments are acutely bittersweet. If you're over 14 and you feel like you could read something that will make you think and would be somewhat enjoyable. I think that you should read this book. This is a really good book, and while it isn't a light read, it's going to keep you interested till the very end. And who are just trying to get a grasp of their life. And that's totally not what I wrote.